All right, hello again. We're going to be talking about public relations writing here, and I'll discuss what public relations is briefly. Most of you, I'm sure, understand that, but we're going to spend some time talking about writing for public relations. There's a lot of similarities in the writing that we've already discussed, but you're writing for a different purpose and with a different objective with public relations writing. Public relations professionals help a business or, in some cases, an individual, certainly organizations such as public schools, universities, help them to cultivate a positive reputation with the public through various unpaid or earned communications. Unpaid is the important word there. Earned is another consideration too. And these include traditional media, the use of social media, and in-person engagements. And here we're primarily interested in traditional media. We'll also talk a little bit about social media. They also help clients defend their reputation during a crisis that threatens their credibility. That's the most dramatic and most visible form of public relations. There's an old saying, advertising is what you pay for, publicity is what you pray for. And publicity here we would be talking about good publicity that reflects favorably on your client, whoever it is that you represent, and that is what we're attempting to achieve. And crisis communications, another situation, and we'll get into that. The media, under key principles, the media are looking for news. They have newscasts to fill, newspapers to publish. All forms of media that are in the news business need news. So public relations is a large and valid source of news. You want to ensure that your news is really news and don't waste the media's time, and the media will often complain about this. So you don't want to put out a news release or media release every day on things that are not genuinely important. News releases can carry public relations messages, and very often do. Following journalism standards for topic and style and format will maximize the likelihood of having your release printed. It's underlined, it's very important that in writing a news release, a media release, that it resemble a story that the news media would write itself. It's important that it be in news style, that it look like news. And we've been talking about style and various aspects of writing news throughout the course. Cultivating personal and positive relationships with the media will pay off. That is outside the aspect of writing, but it's certainly true. If you help the media do their jobs, they may help you do yours. It's good to have those good relationships where they trust you and they realize that what you're providing them is believable and factual, and that they can feel comfortable in using it. All right, let's look at at least part of a video here on writing a news release.
So I like to think of a press release as a written announcement. It could be about an event that you're running, about a new product or service that you're launching, or it could be about a big change in your business, like a takeover or a merger. The key thing is it has to be new, it has to be news, and it has to be newsworthy. So let's look at how to put a press release together. So first off, you need to make sure that you've got a great headline. Now that's because most journalists get hundreds of pictures and press releases every single day. So if you want yours to stand out, you really do need to have a great headline. Let's say you're going to open a cafe in London with your brother, and the only thing you're going to sell is cereal. So this is not the time to get clever and start pulling out all the tricks that your English teacher taught you at school, like alliteration or puns. It's not big and it's not clever. So if your story is about the UK's first cereal cafe, then that's what it needs to say in your headline. Next, you need a compelling first line for your press release. If you don't nail your story in the first line, they'll switch off and move on to something else. Now this is where you can use what your English teacher taught you at school. You need to get as many of the 5 W's in the first sentence of your press release. So that's the who, what, where, when and why into that first line. And you need to try and get your subject, so that's the person or thing carrying out the action, as near to the beginning of that sentence as possible. Note the use of will in that first sentence, so that's the future tense. And you do need to get either the present or the future tense in the first sentence of your press release. That's because it sounds immediate, like it's happening now. The minute you put something in the past, so you say that something happened yesterday, it becomes old news, and journalists just aren't interested in old news.
We'll pause that there. You can watch the rest of that on your own, and I think it's certainly worthwhile to do that. It's likely that an editor will change the content of a news release. In fact, that is considered really unprofessional most of the time to just run a news release as is, just as it was sent to you. So you shouldn't be troubled by that, but as long as they're using the story, that's what you want. Generally, there are 2 types of writing for the mass media, including print and broadcast. There is hard news, just sort of a factual story, and then there's a feature, which is more warm and fuzzy, about some personal aspect of an individual who's in your organization that's amusing or entertaining, and we will focus here on hard news writing, but we will come back at some point and address feature writing as well. Editors and journalists view material from a PR source as potentially biased, as well they should. It is biased. You are trying to represent a particular point of view. That's okay, that's your job. But the editors and journalists recognize that, and so they do take that into account. Some argue that PR writing should be biased because PR writers have a responsibility to promote their employers. That is why they have been employed in the first place. And I certainly think that view is correct. Good PR writing does have a high news value. It should be factual. It may be biased, but it still should be factual. It should be accurate. It should be timely and professional. So it's important to understand that even though you are representing your organization, you want to present it in the best possible light. Your writing should be factual and accurate, also timely and professional. As mentioned in the previous video, you want to include some direct quotes. I'm not sure we got that far in that video, but it is important to include direct quotes, the exact words that someone said in your news release. You don't want most of the writing to be contained in direct quotes, but you want to have some direct quotes. Very often, the PR writer makes up appropriate direct quotes. This is not something you would do at all in traditional journalism, but in PR writing, you are making up appropriate direct quotes for the persons named in the news release who work for your organization. And you should always get approval for this. Now, after a time, they may just allow you to do it and to trust you to do that well and to do it in such a way that it's not embarrassing. But very often, the actual direct quotes are made up by the writer, but with the approval of the management. All right, another video here on writing for news releases.
With a contact person, an extremely viable way to get exposure for your business is to get news coverage from the media. I'm going to show you how to create a great press release that gets noticed. A grand opening, a new product, a record-setting sales year, a new location, or a special event are all good reasons to contact the media and send them a press release. It's important for any business owner to know how to write one that not only gets noticed, but actually turns into news coverage. Here are the things you need to know in order to write a killer press release. Now, to ensure readability, your press release should follow this standard format. It should be typed, double-spaced, and on white letterhead, with the contact person's name, title, company, address, and phone number in the upper right-hand corner.
Let's look at this just for a second, because the appearance of the news release is very, very important, and there's a standard way that they are done. And if you're not doing the standard format, kind of like with the script writing for movies and TV shows, then you're not going to be taken seriously. So you see the logo of the company would go at the top. You see contact information about the writer and the writer's telephone number, writer's email address, the writer of the news release. That phrase for immediate release is the typical thing. You might occasionally put what's called an embargo on a news release and say, it would say for release 6 p.m. Thursday, November 18th, whatever year it might be. And that's an unusual situation, but it does occasionally happen. And you trust the media to respect that and not release the news before that particular day. Then a headline, there may be a subtitle. And then down below here is the body of the story, and it's following the inverted pyramid format that we have talked about. But this is very much what a news release would look like. It's important that it look at first glance to be professional, and we'll have some assignments that will relate to this.
The words "for immediate release" should go at the top of the page on the left margin in capital letters. The headline, usually in bold, should be centered below that. A subtitle can be included in italics that briefly elaborates on the headline. Your headline should be brief, clear, and a condensed version of the press release's key points. It might be helpful to write down your headline at the end, after the rest of the press release is written, so that it clearly defines the overall point of the release. The press release should be written as you want it to appear in the news story. Some journalists simply don't have the time to research your company's story and may use what you've written or make small changes. So whatever you want them to say needs to be clearly laid out in your press release. Now let's look at the body content. The first paragraph should have the most important information. Start with the date and the city in which the press release originates. The lead, or the first sentence, should grab the reader and say concisely what is happening. The first 2 to 3 sentences should sum up the release, and the rest of the paragraphs must elaborate on that.
Okay, I'm going to pause her there. It's a very good video, a very helpful video, and I suggest that that you watch the rest of that. One thing that's important, I'm not sure if I have it in this outline, very important to maintain your objectivity in the writing of the news release. You're writing that as if you are an objective third party writing about whatever the event is or announcement is, and it is you are not writing an advertisement. It's not advertising. It's written as news, and it's written as objective news. So it's important to maintain that objective tone in the news releases that you write. Routine news releases include announcing events, new products, key appointments. University PR writers often send news about students to local media. So if you're from Garland and you've done something wonderful, then they would send it. I'm not sure if there's a daily or even a weekly Garland newspaper anymore, but they would send it to that newspaper. It's more typical that the newspapers still exist in smaller towns. So if you're from Sulphur Springs, then they would send it to the newspaper and the radio stations and so on in Sulphur Springs. Routine news releases are important in maintaining relationships with and organizations, key publics, to just keep your name in the media, keep your name in front of the audience. So it's a valuable thing to be able to use the media in that way. Here's one more video, and we won't watch all of it.
Live TV from 85 plus channels with local sports and news. YouTube TV. Try it free.
Hi everybody, I'm John Graydon. I'm a professional speaker, trainer, and the author of 7 books, including The Imposter Syndrome. Let's talk about how to write a proper press release. And let's correct things right off the bat. It's no longer a press release. In today's electronic dissemination, electronic media, it's now called a media release. And really, the best way to write a media release is not to write a media release. It's better in today's world to write an article on your subject and cite you as an expert being quoted in the article, or talk about the benefits of using your product or service. Because typically with media releases, we're trying to gain attention for our product or service. And if we write a straight XYZ Corporation unleashes the new Phantom XYG configurator, who cares? Nobody cares about that. So we have to have, if we can structure the release into an interesting article that has benefits for the reader and cite our new product or cite ourselves as experts, we can gain more traction. It's going to be a lot more interesting to the editors, and they will typically be more inclined to run an article, a media release disguised as an article, rather than an advertisement disguised as a media release. I hope that makes sense to you. Let's talk about the structure of the media release. Imagine that only the first paragraph is going to be written. That the editor is going to cross everything out, and they're only going to run with that first paragraph. So you want to make sure that all the important information is in there. Who, what, where, when, why. That's the beginning. The middle, we expand upon that.
Okay, I'm going to pause him there, and you can watch the rest of that video again. That's a good video. He has a somewhat different point of view about how to approach that. So we'll leave it at that for now. There will be a second part of this. There will be an assignment, and maybe more than one related to this outline and the next one and the next video. So be watching for those. Okay, thanks.